our soul, Major Georges Ricard! Now, Major Georges Ricard has just overtaken the intelligence department of the French army. But more importantly, I'm led to believe he's a rather fine fencer.
Oh, Major Henri, I fear you give me too much credit.
Oh, surely you will not deny me a friendly competition, or these good club members a little bit of entertainment.
Well, I can hardly refuse now, can I? But, is there a prize?
I suppose there should be. How about a bottle of the finest wine this club has to offer?
That sounds like a splendid prize. Excellent. And I in turn suggest a contest of 3 bouts.
That sounds most agreeable, sir.
Hold up. Ready? Allez. A beautiful hit, monsieur.
Thank you, monsieur.
On that. Right?
Ah, touché, monsieur. You're too fast for me.
All depends on the third then.
It would appear so.
On that. Right?
Touché, monsieur. The contest is yours. Round of applause for Major Georges Ricard.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Keith. That's David.
And what you've just witnessed is a few sportive bouts of fencing as it may have appeared in the late 1800s. Now, the sword we're using today is known as the épée. This is quite simply the French word for sword. But we do use épée in the modern English to refer to a more sportive weapon such as this modern fencing épée that Keith has so beautifully demonstrated for you now. Now, despite wearing costume from the late 1800s, the techniques that you've just seen are very similar to what you might find in fencing schools around the country today.
Now, épée fencing is really very easy to learn. You can hit your opponent anywhere on the body. The only rule is you have to hit them with the point. And you have to do this with the extension of the arm, called the thrust, and then the leg, which is called a lunge. So, David, would you like to demonstrate the perfect lunge? Lovely. Look at that. Pushed off on the back leg, landed on the front, bent his front leg, judged the distance, made a beautiful hit. But, of course, I don't want to get hit, do I? Therefore, I've got a series of parries which are designed to set David's leg aside. I can decide how we parry and indeed how we attack. We divide the body into 4. So there's a line running across the chest, and there's a line running right down through the centre of the nose, going right down to your toes. And that divides the body up into the high right, the high left, the low right, the low left. So perhaps, David, if you'd like to give me 4 lunges, 2 high and 2 low. So high right, high left, low right, low left. Once again, makes sense. But then you have to ask yourself the question, are 2 fencers just going to stand there? And are 2 duelists whose lives depend on it just going to stand there and poke away at each other? No, of course they're not. At some point, the attacker is going to gain the advantage, they're going to push the defender back, and when this happens, you have to say to yourself, how do you move forward when you've just given yourself a great long stretch into a lunge? And the answer to that is that you bring your back leg up, and that becomes what's called an advance. And then the defender stretches back with his back leg and brings his front leg back, and that's called a retreat. So how about 3 lunges then in quick succession, David, pushing me back? So 1, 2, whoa! Let's do that again. Let's do that again, just for timing.
Yeah, go on.
Oh, nicely done. That was what we were looking for. And a beautiful little deceit you saw at the end there as well. So we landed that hit. Now, once you've learned that set of rules, you're basically ready to start épée fighting. Why is it all so simple? Because épée techniques are based on the real techniques, the deadly techniques, the simple techniques of the duel of honour.
Yes, the duel of honour, an age-old tradition where two offended parties will meet up and settle their differences through force of arms. Now, these earlier deaths are always almost fought to the death. But luckily for us here in England, under Queen Elizabeth I, this sort of duelling was made illegal. Luckily for the Queen, it proved too popular a practice, and people continued to duel well into the 20th century.
However, if you were a duelist in Elizabethan England, you wouldn't be using a lightweight weapon like we just showed you. Rather, you'd be using a weapon called a rapier. And this is a particular style called a cut-hilt rapier for obvious reasons. You can see it's got a longer blade, and it's also got a more substantial blade. That means there's a little bit more weight to it. Now, in Elizabethan England, sometimes these swords became ridiculously fashionably long. Sometimes as long as both the sword and David's dagger put together. And that meant that the sword was difficult to parry with. And that's why the dagger's there. Because a lot of duelists began attacking with the sword, but parrying with the dagger. So that takes us through most of the 1600s. When we look into the 1700s, a new sword makes its appearance. The so-called small sword, for obvious reasons. It's got a smaller hilt, it's got a narrower, shorter blade than the rapier we just looked at. This is the predecessor of the epee. And it came about really just because civilian fighters weren't wearing thickly padded clothing and several layers of it, as the Elizabethans had done. They were down to pretty much what we wear today, a jacket, a waistcoat, and a shirt, and therefore you could do the same amount of damage with a lighter sword. But don't get the wrong idea, because these weapons are very, very deadly. Quite apart from anything else, now you only had the sword to worry about. It was very lightweight, and that meant you could do both your attacking and your parrying with the one weapon. So the dagger went in the bin. Then we come into the 1800s. In the 1800s, the sword goes out of fashion as a dueling weapon, and a new weapon, the pistol, takes over. And this is at exactly the same time as countries all over Europe start trying to legislate the duel out of existence.
Well, except for France, of course.
I'll give you France.
Yeah, the French love their duelling. No, the last duel of honour to occur in France happens as late as 1967. If you don't believe me, you can go and watch it. The whole thing was filmed. Now, of course, these later duels are not fought to the death. They're usually fought to what is first blood. And this is essentially any cut, nick or wound achieved during the combat would have the duel be over, satisfaction achieved, and the two offended parties would go their way. But don't underestimate these situations, because the losing party's reputation could be damaged forever as a result of this.
So what we're going to do now is talk to you just a little bit about one of the most famous of these late 19th century French duels. It took place in 1898 during a military scandal which has become famously known as the Dreyfus Affair.
Captain Alfred Dreyfus, a French officer, was wrongly accused of spying for the German army. He was found guilty of this crime in 1894 and will be imprisoned in a penal colony for life, known as Devil's Island.
Now, in 1896, a new head of military intelligence took over, Georges Picard, the character I played in the earlier fencing scene, and he quickly became convinced that Dreyfus wasn't the real traitor, but another man, Esterhazy, was responsible. The problem was proving it.
Yes, indeed. And there was another problem, for there was a rather obstructive officer of the name Hubert Joseph Henri, who would publicly humiliate and simply call Picard a liar.
And Picard would demand a duel to first blood,
which Henri accepted. Now, if we're to conduct a duel of first blood for you today, we are going to need our seconds. Seconds are friends or associates of the duelist whose job it is to make sure that fair play is enacted upon and no cheating happens. There is a slight problem, and that is, me and Keith don't have many friends. So you, the lovely audience, are going to have to be our second. So, you wonderful people shall be my second, you wonderful people shall be Keith's second, and we've not forgotten about you wonderful people too. You shall be the final judges in today's conflict. Now, what we're going to ask of you is very simple. Me and Keith are going to fight one another, and we are going to hit one another. And when we hit one another, we're going to need you to check if there's any blood. If there is blood, you shout, "First blood!" and the duel is over. If there is no blood, you shout, "No blood!" and we carry on fighting. Is that understood?
Got it?
Yeah?
Splendid.
Very straightforward, right? Excellent. Let's get this rather distasteful rematch underway, shall we?
Indeed. And this time we shan't be dueling for a bottle of wine, shall we? We'll be dueling for our honour.
That was easy.
You must have good eyesight.
No blood.
No blood.
Must be something wrong with my sword.
No, just your technique.
Right. Any blood? No blood! You seem like a trustworthy fellow. Let's see. Oh.
First blood.
First blood.
First blood, and thus Picard won the duel, and honour was satisfied. I thank you.